So when we look at the visual system in people with body image disorders, one of the things that we see is that they don't look at the world the way the healthy people look at the world. They look at the world in a very fragmented way.
Welcome back to the Smarter Not Harder podcast. I'm your host, Jodi Duval. In today's episode, we're joined once again by Dr. Susan Rossell, a leading clinical neuropsychologist and researcher based in Australia. Dr. Rossell's expertise in cognitive neuroscience has illuminated our understanding of body image issues and their connections to mental health, which we are discussing today. Last time Susan was on the show, we were discussing psilocybin in detail, and today she is back to talk to us about body image. As a professor of cognitive neuropsychology and director of the Brain and Psychological Sciences Research Centre at Swinburne University of Technology, Dr. Rossell focuses on unraveling the neural mechanisms that underlie conditions like schizophrenia, bipolar, and anxiety disorders. Today, we explore how Dr. Rossell's expertise contributes to our understanding of body image. We delve into the role of neural mechanisms in shaping our perception of body image and discuss key findings from her research and the new survey that she's putting out that highlight the intricate link between body image and mental health. Dr. Rossell's work sheds light on these intersections, revealing the complex interplay between mental health and self-perception. Beyond knowledge, Dr. Rossell's research holds practical implications. By understanding the neurobiological basis of body image issues, we can delve more effective interventions and therapies. Her insights pave the way for targeted treatments that address the underlying neural factors contributing to these challenges. Dr. Rossell's multi-dimensional approach, combining research and clinical practice, equips her to address body image concerns comprehensively. Moreover, she acknowledges the impact of cultural and societal influences on body image perceptions, enriching her work's context and relevance. Looking ahead, Dr. Rossell and her team continue to explore new research avenues, seeking a deeper understanding of body image's impact on mental health. Her findings not only raise awareness about these issues, but also contribute to broader conversations about mental well-being in society. Join us in this episode as we unpack Dr. Susan Rossell's pioneering research, revealing the intricate links between cognitive neuroscience, body image, and mental health. And Dr. Susan at the end asks that if you have any more information that you would like to share on her body image survey, all the links will be in the show notes. So, Dr. Susan Rossell, welcome back to the show, and you are the first guest to make it on a round two. So awesome to have you.
It's good to be back.
So we're here on the Smarter Not Harder podcast, and you have just launched a body image survey. So we are here to talk about body image. And it is a big topic at the moment, and we were just discussing it off air. But I'd like to just launch straight into, I don't know if it's a good segue into it, but the Barbie movie.
Oh, yes, that little one.
Watch the Barbie movie. And I was slightly surprised by, actually in a pleasant way. I was actually impressed with how they were portraying difficult issues. However, I think there is a lot to say for some of that. I think Barbie has a big contribution to a lot of the plastics that we have out in the environment too, so we won't go there. But let's segue into that to start with, and what's your perception on these sorts of things coming out in the media, because I think it can be a positive thing if it's done the right way.
Yeah, I haven't seen the Barbie movie yet, so I can't comment on that. But it's good to hear that they were doing things in a positive way, because I guess my experience today of all things Barbie and is not positive. And there's been a lot of reports in the literature of women that have gone to extreme lengths in terms of plastic surgery to make themselves look more akin to Barbies and the dolls that we see. There's obviously, when people go to extreme length, they obviously have quite a significant body image disorder, and it's usually body dysmorphic disorder. But I think even if we don't talk about the extremes, talking about the over-sexualization of our body image and over kind of promotion of what is an attractive woman obviously has considerable social ramifications. And we know that when we're talking about body image, there's as with anything psychological, probably that you have on the show, we talk about our biology, we talk about psychological aspects and the way that people perceive things and our cognition, and we talk about the social aspects. And so social aspects have considerable impact on us. You know, you can look back in history and you know, looking back at some of the old kings and queens of England, and I often talk about that, and the fashions that they wore became, you know, the things that people wanted to do to themselves and look like in the rest of it, because they were the idols of the time. And, you know, and when they started to wear corsets and, you know, bring all their waists in. So we always have this kind of social and cultural influence, and people aspire to be like what we now call influencers. So old kings and queens used to be called influencers. And I think we need to be really careful who is an influencer and who, you know, and especially when it comes to these body image extremes. And there's so much conversation about it, you know, and we were talking about our body positivity and being happy in the body that you're in, and a lot more kind of I guess typical looking people that are neither thin or larger, or, you know, just sit as a general person. You know, more people like that are becoming, you know, people we should aspire to because they're happy in their body and so on and so forth. And I like all of those messages that we're giving to children to be comfortable in your own skin, whatever you look like, whatever color your skin is, whatever size your body is, whether you're short or whether you're tall or however you cut your hair. I really like those messages that we're giving to people. I guess my only slight reservation about it is when it goes to extremes, and I have now heard, you know, the body positivity movement, fabulous, but then it gets to toxic levels. You know, we can't be absolutely 100% happy with absolutely everything about our bodies or everything about ourselves. You know, we have to accept sometimes that there's things that we might not have hugely positive feelings about. And so I just to be a little bit careful when we're doing, you know, talking about body positivity, to just be it's actually all right as well to be dissatisfied with some things.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just like to comment back to the kings and queens is that, you know, from some of my research on body image, you know, even through there's been, like you say, so many extremes, the corsets, the bending of the feet to make the feet smaller, the ring. So our idea of beauty has changed and developed, obviously, according to certain things. So then I obviously look at it in a more of a, you know, contextual way and see how it's developed. But it has been there for so long.
Absolutely.
And obviously there's fads and certain, like you say, influencers or idolizers that people look up to look towards, because there is something that they feel is missing within themselves. So therefore they need to, you know, become something else to fill that gap. So, you know, when I look at the body positivity, you know, yes, like you say, there is a positive part to that because it's creating a bit more acceptance. But then, you know, if you then speak out about, like you say, and I've seen these comments on certain platforms and, you know, oh, yeah, I still don't feel, you know, good about this, or a comment about someone else. And they're like, oh, well, you know, you're not saying that in the body positive way. So then you just, like you said, it's becoming toxic, just like a vegan or a vegetarian group. As soon as you step outside of that group, boom, you're attacked. You know, it's still not positive in that way.
No,
so it's still in people. So what I want to ask, Susan, is, you know, from your perspective, obviously we don't know these answers yet, but from a, you know, a cognitive neuroscience background, What is the sort of neural pathways, or what are you believing is involved sort of at that intricate level for us to become so obsessed with body image, or, like you say, dysmorphic in a way that we're seeing it in a different way?
So yeah, so we've done a lot of work over the last 20 years as to, you know, people that get cross the line, and people that become very unwell, and they become obsessed with their body and their body image, and it becomes an everyday stressor for them. And it's complex, as I said. You know, we have the biological, the psychological, and the social pressures. But in terms of the biological, we're still doing research. Myself, and then there's another psychiatrist in the States, a gentleman called Jamie Fusner. We've probably done the most neuroimaging work in the world. And as with any mental health condition, we don't have the complete answer. We have some clues as to what's going on. And actually, it was some of our behavioral work, I think, has given us bigger clues that when we followed it up with neuroimaging, has kind of confirmed what we're showing. So when people with body image disorders like body dysmorphic disorder are taken into the lab, and we've done a lot of work with them looking at their eye movements and looking at how they look at things. Because if we take a step back and go, well, what is it? How do we construct a body image? How do we construct our own body image? So there's the internal feelings. So that's a process called interoception. There's our feelings about our body on the outside, or proprioception, or our body map. And then there's how we look at the world. So our visual stimuli. So we can combine all of those elements, and obviously our touch as well. So we combine all of those senses, and they're all, you know, really important senses to come up with or construct an idea about how we look in our heads. We've done a little bit, so just to round out the picture, we've done a little bit of work on proprioception and a little bit of work on touch, and there doesn't seem to be any problem in body image disorders on those two features. Interoception is showing a few clues that there might be something going on with interoception, but we've only just started that work. But we have been looking at the visual system and people with body image disorders for quite a long time. So when we look at the visual system in people with body image disorders, one of the things that we see is that they don't look at the world the way the healthy people look at the world. They look at the world in a very fragmented way. And I talk about a couple of things when I talk about this. I talk about features, and I talk about the configuration. So when you are looking at me, you take into account the features of my face. So you take into account my eyes and my nose and mouth, and then you put that into a configuration. So you know that my eyes go above my nose, go above my mouth, etc., etc. And most people, when they're looking at the world, look at the world configurally. And the reason we do that is because it takes a lot of processing power, but we also use our things called priors, our prior experience to unless there is something very wrong with the world, we know that a face is configured the way that it is, and it just cuts down on processing, and it also it allows us to process a lot more of the world. So you know, my face sits above my body, etc., and we use our prior knowledge to help us guide our visual system through the world. One of the things that we know about people with BDD, and again, this is absolutely played out with some of our neuroimaging data, is they get stuck looking at features. So they don't take in the whole in the same way, and as with the quickness and the swiftness. And so this is one of the reasons why we think that they get stuck looking, say, for example, if they were very unhappy with their nose, they get stuck looking at their nose in the mirror, and they don't take in the rest of their nose. And we know from other bits of our work, when you get stuck on a feature processing, it actually means that you become more critical of it. and you do notice all the blemishes. And I think I was challenging you to this list last time. If you started sitting and look at your nose for a long time, you won't like it. And it's just a thing that we know about. And then the other thing that we know about people with body image disorders, so they have this problem with their visual system. They get stuck in pictorial processing and they find it more difficult. I'm not saying that they can't engage in configural processing, they just find it more challenging and their brain doesn't switch so quickly. The other thing that we know about people with body image disorders is they have more problems processing emotions. And the way that they process emotions is quite difficult for them. So we've done a series of experiments where we've actually asked them to look at faces that are showing emotions. And when you and I are looking at a face, one of the things that what we all do is we look across the eyes and down to the mouth. And the reason we do that is, so this triangle pattern is because our eyes and our mouth are the features of our face that have the musculature for communication, but also to express emotions. So, you know, when you look at my face, if I'm smiling, I'm happy. If my mouth's turned down, I'm sad. But you will also look at my eyes because my eyes will sort of be reflective. And so that's what you do. You look across, and so you do that extraordinarily quickly. You won't even know that your eyes are moving like that. But if I stick an eye tracker onto you, that is exactly what you will be doing. People with BDD just don't do that. They don't engage in that triangle pattern, and they find it extremely, they get very, as I said to you before, they get very stuck in particular features. So they're not taking in the whole of the face. So one of the things that happens then is they're not able to extract the emotions of people around them. And they also then don't feel the emotion, that you know, the sort of emotional connection with other people. And they often think that people are behaving very negatively towards them. And then they think the negativity is because of the thing that they're most upset about in terms of their body image. So there's this kind of circular pattern of problems with visual processing, but also problems with emotion recognition and emotion processing that kind of smash together. And that's where they get, oh, nobody likes me. Everybody's looking at my body in a kind of disgusted way. And it's all, you know, inaccurate interpretations of what people around them are doing. And back to your question, and that's kind of played out in what we're seeing in the neuroimaging data, that they have problems with what we refer to as the limbic system, our emotion system, and the visual system. So long answer, but I just thought I'd give you all the bits of the puzzle that we've put together.
Yeah. So a few thoughts from what you've just said there are, you know, obviously there's ranges of this, you know, because I can see some of these comparisons in a minor way in some people that I interact with, and then obviously some are much more major. So then obviously there is different scales of BDD across the, and you know, so another question before we move on, is there anything else associated with what you've noticed with this? You know, is there hormones involvement? Is there nutritional deficiency involvement, you know, specifically that you've noticed with these sorts of neural processes or ability there? But also my other comment is the mask that we've had to wear for the last few years, it makes so much more sense now, the inability for us to feel comfortable in an environment because we're not actually able to do that triangle movement. It makes so much sense now.
Yeah, no, I mean, for our bonding, so our social bonding masks were awful. And I actually have grave concerns about children, you know, because they're learning to extract the emotional cues from people from it's you know, it's, we know from some of the early developmental work, it's actually not innate. You do actually have to learn it. And then if everyone around you is wearing a mask, it does concern. I guess parents at home weren't wearing masks, so let's hope, you know, they still were able to extract enough cues from people.
Yeah.
Coming to your other bits of your question, Look, there are other bits. There are other bits to the puzzle in terms of body dysmorphia and people with significant body image disorders. We've not really found anything nutritionally or hormonally or anything along those lines. There's certainly genetic links, but whether that's a learned behavior from people around you or is, biologically passed is up for question, because it could be both. There do seem to be sort of a great deal of social influences. There are all the same social influences that we were talking about at the beginning, in terms of influences and in terms of culture and those sorts of things. But one of the other things that we've found in people with BDD is that they have experienced more teasing and perhaps bullying at school compared to the people with other mental health disorders. And the other one is that they often come from families where, and it's a difficult one to explain, but where we refer to aesthetics or beauty is kind of quite important. And I'm not just talking about your own beauty. I'm talking about things like art and perfectionism and the way that your house is decorated, and they come from families where those things are very valued. Nice art and nice pieces of work and your house is very in order and tidy and controlled. So yeah, and I'm not saying that that's all families, but we have noticed trends there. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So obviously I want to ask you a little bit about the actual survey and what you found so far and what's been so concerning. And then I want to get into maybe your ideas around what that treatment looks like and what you're looking at or looking into for these specific treatments or these conditions. But, in terms of, firstly, gender and age, is there any differences, even with the survey that you've just, put out, or in your clinical practice, anything that you're noticing that's more females, more males, more younger children? Like, what are the sort of trends across that way?
Yeah, so certainly in terms of age, we see that body image disorders certainly start in childhood, and I think the trend for that is been around for the last 100 years. So I don't think we've got any difference with that. Unlike some mental health disorders, some of the anxiety disorders that seem to burn out or diminish and get better as people get older, if people have had a body image disorder, it seems to stay pretty constant their entire life. I just one sentence about the treatments that we've got don't work. Some of them work a bit better than others, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so powerfully trying to advocate to do more work in this field, because we need some treatments that actually do work. Then in terms of gender, and I think that this is one of the biggest misnomers I would absolutely like your listeners to understand. Body image disorders are probably equal across the genders. What we do see and what is mislabeled is obviously there are more people with eating disorders that are female, and that is absolutely true. About 90% of people with eating disorders are female and only 10% are men. And a lot of people with eating disorders have body image problems as well. So that is a definite gender kind of difference. But in terms of just a body image disorder without the eating disorder component, they're about equal. And in terms of the body parts, we do obviously see the difference in terms of men and women have different body parts. So so there is a difference there in terms of the body parts that people can become fixated on. And females are often more concerned with the female body parts, so our breasts. And men are often more concerned with male things that are socially kind of excited. So they're often concerned with their hair and their hairline. But the primary body parts that people are concerned with are actually the face. In most cases, it's the face. And the other thing is like the body as a whole. And there's a lot of concerns about symmetry in the body being equally symmetrical. That seems to be quite a big thing. So when we sort of grade the different body parts, it's always face first, and then this issue with symmetry, and then the sort of gender differences in terms of breasts and hair and so on. I think that was what you were asking me. I can't. Yeah. We just finished a study a couple of years ago where we had 70, I think, people with body dysmorphia, which confirmed what I just told you about the body parts and the gender and everything. The only thing that was slightly different was women seemed to have what we refer to as less insight. They were more convinced absolutely what they were saying was absolutely true, and the person that was looking at them was the person that was misperceiving, whereas men could concede that they might be thinking awryly and actually maybe they could be challenged. The other thing, there was one more thing I was going to say, that is men are more likely to have one variant of body dysmorphic disorder that women don't necessarily have quite so often, and that's a variant called muscle dysmorphia, where they think their muscles are very, very puny and small, and they become gym junkies essentially and go to the gym all the time to make themselves look like, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime. And even when they look in the mirror, they see these tiny little muscles. And that variant is very male heavy, although I have started to see some females with muscle dysmorphia now.
Wow. So there's a few things I want to touch on. Obviously, you mentioned right at the start offline that we do have a crisis as such on our hands.
Yeah.
So, you know, and you see the degree of this. You know, when I went over to America last year, I saw the degree of what people are doing to change their body. And it's really quite, I find it quite saddening, actually. So, you know, why how do people not see that they don't, you know, again, it's we've already explored all these, but these are the things that go through my mind when I'm looking at these people with disproportionate, you know, lips and things that don't move. And obviously we can move into even, you know, extreme Botox when you don't have facial movements, and therefore an inability to actually read emotions because of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, so for all these things I look at when I see society in front of me, you know, so there is huge degrees, and obviously I get a lot of clients in here with you know, breast illnesses, you know, breast implant illness, things like that. You know, but a lot of them come to the realization eventually that, oh, well, it's actually not that important for me to have bigger breasts, you know. And it's generally, and I generalize here a lot, is it comes from that they've had children, they see they have a greater high need, or something that they're, you know, looking after themselves for, and realize that that's not important anymore. So, you know, what have you noticed, or any comments on any of that in regards to the level of crisis that we have at the moment?
Yeah, I think one of the things that has certainly happened in the years that I've worked in this field is one of the messages that myself and you know, lots of colleagues around the world have really been trying to make sure that the general public understands is that, you know, if you have a body image issue, it's not vanity, you know. There's a large variability of body image distress and body image kind of negativity, and it's not vanity. You know, we're all, I challenge anybody that listens to this to say that they have got the perfect body, because we all know that there's something that you don't quite like, and it's about accepting that something that you don't quite like. Or go to the nail salon and get your nails done once a week. Go to the hair salon and get your hair done. You know, go to the beauticians and get your skin looked at. You know, we all have things that are not ideal, and it's not vain to accept that. And I think that message is getting through, and I think that for me is a great thing. And I think with that message that to be unhappy with certain things about your body is not vanity, then becomes the kind of accept where on the continuum you are in terms of how much it distresses you and how much you can actually do about it and how much it's true. Okay. And so there is a lot more acceptance, so people are coming forward, so that's a good thing. But then there does seem to be a rise in distress, and that's the thing that worries me, and I'm not quite sure why there's a rise in so much distress about it. Is it the cultural pressures to do something about it? Is it because we have now broken down the barriers and it is more acceptable to talk about it? However, I guess one of the things that I guess counters some of those arguments is we still see absolute extreme shame in people that do have body image disorders. So there's something quite unique about people with body image disorders. Even though we have broken down some of the barriers, we are talking about these things a lot more often, they're incredibly ashamed of what they think. And so in that shame, there is kind of this idea that they do have an extreme opinion about their body that they know people don't share. And the other thing that we've seen with people with body dysmorphic disorder is they do ask people a lot, oh, what do you think of my nose? Or what do you think of, so that they are getting feedback quite a lot from their loved ones and people around them about what other people think about their body, that bit that they truly believe is disfigured, and they don't get any feedback that it is. So there's something quite unique about them that we haven't quite unpacked why they've got to the level of their extreme thoughts. I've shared with you some thoughts that we've got, but we're still not completely there as to why they get to that end of the spectrum. Yeah.
So just back on your point before as well, the hairdressers and the beauticians, I think a lot of it have been, touted as self-care now, which is great. And I think, for us to feel good about ourselves is not vanity, but it's also looking at the inside of us, which is the mental health side, but also the physical health side of things. You do need to look after your skin, or you do need to do things to make things more, appealing to yourself, and it makes it nice. Yeah. My facials, I get all the things. Yeah. Done. And it's those sorts of things, I believe. But what I've also noticed, and I don't know if you have a specific comment on this, but it would be more around aging. There is definitely an anti-aging realm. Yes, and I'm a part of it in terms of longevity for the body, for cells, for making sure we don't break down too quickly. And there's health conditions that we look out for, the inflammation and things like that, which is very healthy. We don't want us to suffer in terms of bad health conditions. But from the external point of view, there is really a fear around aging. Absolutely. And I think, even myself, I must admit, as soon as you start seeing wrinkles, you start to, reach the, end of your 30s and, where I am at, and I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. Most people reach 40 and they think, goodness me, where am I going now? Yeah. But, why? Obviously, there is this whole social media, what we're fed, movies, etc., information feeding. But yeah, comments, I guess, around that anti-aging realm.
Yeah, we've been doing some work over the last year with the Botox industry, looking to from the I'm not sure whether any of your listeners are aware, but from the 1st of July this year, there was a change to the national guidelines that anyone that wants any extreme kind of cosmetic surgery needs to actually have a psychological assessment before they have any extreme work done. So we've been working with the plastic surgeons and the cosmetic surgeons for a little while now, looking at what kinds of assessments they need to do. And sorry, that was a that was a backtrack. But anyway, we've been working with some of the cosmetic surgeons about, you know, why people do go and get cosmetic surgery and why people go and get Botox. And yes, as you quite correctly said, there's this massive anti-aging movement. And, you know, and women in the movie industry are touted as beautiful if they don't look like they've aged, and they put all of these filters all over them when they're photographed in magazines and on YouTube videos. And so you don't get the real them. And then, you know, women in the general public say, well, I want to look like that because, you know, if Madonna looks like that, surely I can by the time I'm 65, which isn't true because she doesn't in real life. And they put all these filters on her to make her look 35. And I think that kind of I don't know, false percept it's just not healthy. And I actually was speaking in the media the other day about, I think I can't remember, it's one of the big makeup companies, I think it was L'Oreal, but I don't want to say it was complete, I'm not 100%, but they've created a filter that you can use on Zoom. So there's apparently 6 different makeup looks that you can put, and it uses AI, and you can pick the look that you want, so you don't have to put your makeup on in the morning. It's just on your Zoom filter. And I'm just like, how is that even remotely healthy for anybody to just constantly never look like they actually look like? It's not healthy in terms of getting the feedback for yourself, but it's also not healthy in terms of how you're portraying yourself to other people, because other people are going to go, oh, I need to look like that. And it's all crap. Let's just be honest, it's all false. We've done a whole heap of stuff, you know, since COVID and Zoom, and the damage that Zoom has done to all of us is really quite dramatic. You know, if you think about it, prior to COVID, and teleconferencing really wasn't used very much. It was started to come in a little bit, and we were starting to use it, but it was the odd meeting, and it was usually when we were talking to our colleagues overseas, or a national thing. It was certainly not an everyday thing. And we have gone from maybe looking at ourselves in the mirror for 10 minutes a day to seeing ourselves all the time. And there's that little, like, you know, devil on your shoulder constantly going, oh, look at that wrinkle there. Oh, look at that wrinkle there. Oh, maybe you need to, you know, get your grey covered up, or, you know, whatever it is about your face and the top of your body that you don't like. And you're being reminded about it all the time in a culture where we've got this anti-aging climate. And, you know, there are people like me that are going, oh, gosh, why have we got this, you know, happening to us when we know that all of these things play in the general public's mind all the time? It's really quite concerning. And this new makeup filter really staggered me the other day. I was like, you didn't talk to any psychologist about whether that was actually remotely healthy for people?
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think, you know, not only that, in that we're perceiving ourselves in completely unrealistic ways, and these filters on even social media are changing the shapes of your faces, so you don't actually recognize yourself or the people who could not, you know, most of the time you see someone in the real flesh, and they don't look anything like they've presented themselves online. And I think that's just, you know, but it's just seen as normal. It's just seen
absolutely. Yeah.
And I think this fear of aging is also in a culture that we have, you know, lack of respect, or lack of, you know, for the elderly, for the wisdom that comes from looking.
I know. It staggers me. What does it really? And then it's like, well, what does it really matter what it's like on the inside? It's about what you do and what you say and who you are as a person and how you interact with people. Yes, looking good on the outside makes us feel good on the inside, and, you know, we should all embrace that as much as possible. But it's not everything. It's about who we are as humans. And I think maybe we should replace the body positivity movement with the people positivity movement, because it is about our behavior at the end of the day.
It is, because it can be the grossest type of person in terms of personality and treating people badly, but if you look good, then well, that's fine then.
That's fine. I know. I'm sure that's not true.
What I miss is, the texts that I read and the books that I read, and the elderly are put up on this pedestal. And I particularly in Australia, that because it's the only lens that I know, is that they put into healthcare, homes. They're almost tried to be hidden away and not supported. Whereas there's cultures that make it so amazing. There's elderly people that are always in the homes. They die in the homes. Then the death, the ability to actually see death in a different way is incredible. But as you said, I think being healthy is good, and I think we see aging as being unhealthy.
I think we do. I think absolutely. Yeah. I was just going to say, I've been reading some Japanese psychology over the last few months, just because I have. I don't only read work on but one of the things that they were talking about in terms of longevity is that cultural and different societal aspect, is that their parents just move back in with them when they get older, but also they look after themselves a lot better. And I think this is where some Western cultures have gone so wrong. We fill our bodies full of toxins every day. We eat horrible diets. Lots of people don't do any exercise whatsoever. And we haven't got this kind of a collectivist culture where it's very accepting to do things in family groups, or neighborhood groups and so on and so forth. And this is one of the reasons why they think people in Japan are living a lot longer, and people in Italy live a lot longer, because they've got all of these features sorted. They have healthy diets, people walk everywhere, and they have a lot more kind of kinship and cultural, like neighborhood cultural things in their lives, and as you said, and aging isn't frowned upon. In fact, it's embraced.
And they taught respect of body and respect of each other, and that's where value that above anything else. And I totally agree. The Okinawas, and then the Sardinians, all those cultures that have been studied. It's incredible to see how they embrace all of that, and how they.
And there was the Okinawans. Like, there was a group at one point of 50 of them that were over 115.
Wow!
And I'm just like, they've got something right.
And at that age, they're still physically active and contributing to the community. Is impressive. For what we normally see as an aging population. Almost we see people, non-physical at 80 years old, whereas that's another, 30 years plus.
Absolutely, 80 is seen as young. And this good. I mean, we say it again and again. Diet and exercise. Diet and exercise is just a thing, and we've got it very, very wrong over here.
Yeah, I totally agree. And a lot of my work in clinic is just minor, but I really truly try to work with people's respect for their body again, just tuning in again, creating a temple work where they're actually looking after what's moving them around every single day. And people are more likely to spend, and this is the industry that's massive right now, obviously the cosmetic industry, they're more likely to spend more money on the external part of their face, and this is just my observation, this is not research, than to spend money on the internal, like the food, like even the medicines to help support them on the inside, good medicines. So it's surprising, it's how we've gone to that point compared to where those cultures are. And they have lack of suffering, whereas we have so much suffering because we feel so unfulfilled. I believe. Absolutely.
I guess one of the reasons why I brought it up is yes, we're running a national body image survey in Australia, but once I've run it in Australia, I would actually like to go to Japan, and I would like to go to some of the Pacific Islands, and I would like to go to Italy, and actually really understand it across cultures, because I would say that Australia, when I've got the data, is going to look very similar to a lot of European countries, especially the UK and France and Germany, especially America. But I would say some of these other societies will probably have a lot less body image issues, but it'd be interesting to see.
It would be, absolutely. So, Susan, before we have to wrap up, you mentioned that treatment is non-effective right now. So obviously this is the push for you to be doing this survey to try and find, ways to actually help people in a larger context. So what are the things, and we did briefly talk about this in our prior podcast, psilocybin, the psychedelic therapies. So what sort of things are you looking at from broad spectrum for body image support for treatment?
So, where we're sitting at the moment is there's the evidence sits around about 2% of people get to such a distressed state that they need intervention for a body image disorder like body dysmorphic disorder. However, one of the things that we've seen is that just doesn't seem to be the case anymore. I think it's a lot more people, and the initial data from our survey, so we've got about the first 2,000 cases out of the 50,000 that we want, and it's sitting around 10%, which is what some of the American studies are starting to show in terms of prevalence. So we have got a massive crisis on our hands in terms of body image disorders in the general population. But then what do we do with them? Because the other data that we've got is the interventions that sit in the clinics at the moment, which are typically in the first instance, because even though there is this acceptance about body image disorders, most people with a body image disorder don't see a mental health clinician for about 15 years after they've started to develop the ideas. What they actually go and see a mental health clinician about in the first instance is they're depressed and anxious, and usually depressed. And it's because these ideas of a body part being grotesque and disformed and all the rest of it has just played on their mind for 15 years, and in the end they go and get some help for their depression. So they go on antidepressants. The antidepressants are fairly successful for us, but only for a small proportion of people. So we found that they are successful for about 30 to 40% of people. So it's not huge. So we've got about 60% of people that they don't seem to make any difference whatsoever. The thing that we also have is obviously all the psychotherapies. So there is no medication. There's no body image medication. You can't go to your GP and say, hey, I think my nose is grotesque. Can you give me a body image medication? There isn't one. They will help with the negative feelings, and they'll also but that's it. The cognitive behavior therapy model is the one that's most typically used, and there is a little bit of work now in mindfulness and a technique using a mirror. So the technique using the mirror is getting you to so comes back to the conversation that we had earlier, actually getting you to look at yourself in a configural way, so standing back and looking at your body as a whole. So that feeds into obviously some of the really experimental work that I did a few years ago. And for some people, when they've got to a stage where they're emotionally ready to do that, that technique can work really nicely with people, because it is sort of retraining the brain to stand back and look at the bigger picture. But it's long therapy. People often don't want to engage. So a lot of the behavioral work that we do as part of the cognitive behavior therapy is exposure work and getting people to look at themselves in the mirror, or to expose their so one of the things that people with BDD do is they do a lot of camouflaging. So they wear big hats, or they wear makeup, or they wear clothes in a certain way to hide their body. And what we're trying to do in the therapy is to stop them doing that, so expose themselves. And it's very stressful, and they can find it very traumatic. And anyway, and it can help some people, but it's not the silver bullet, as we say. So we're kind of a bit stuck. Like you said, we did refer to the psilocybin, which I'm hoping is going to start some trials next year. The other The other intervention that we've worked on a little bit and had some amazingly promising results, but it was only a small study, is we did do some brain training. So instead of using the mirror, we got them to do some visual exercises online, really bringing people out of featural processing into configural processing. And it was amazingly helpful for people, but it's quite time consuming and quite expensive, and none of the services wanted to take it up. So that's another problem that we have. Well, I particularly have as a researcher. So sometimes I find interventions that work, but the services just don't have the funding to roll them out. The last one I will touch on, because I've talked about this in the media before, and I'm currently running a clinical trial on this at the moment, is oxytocin. So for those of you that don't know what oxytocin is oxytocin is a hormone. We produce it naturally in our bodies. It's produced at several points in the day and over our lifetime. So it's known as the love hormone, and we get oxytocin when we're bonding with our peers. So go give your friends a hug, and your oxytocin levels will raise naturally in our body. And oxytocin levels are also very high when women have just had a baby, because they need to bond with their babies. So we have this hormone inside us. Men and women have it equally. It gets higher when they've just had a baby. And one of the things that we know with oxytocin is it can help with the way that people engage in emotional expressions. And as I talked to you earlier, people with BDD have problems with extracting emotional expressions and understanding emotional expressions. So we're currently doing a trial at the moment with people with BDD. Half of the participants that come to do our trial will get oxytocin, the other will get placebo. We ran a pilot study a few years ago and had amazingly promising results. So we're, fingers crossed that it does work. Because if that one works, that's amazingly cost effective and easy to roll out into clinical services, and could be one of the, silver bullets that maybe people are looking for. But apart from that, I need to do a lot more research, and that's the reason why we're doing this National Body Image Survey. So we need to know how many people have body image issues, how long you've had your body image issues, who you've been to talk to in terms of the medical professionals, and then we can start to look and break down some of those barriers, but also really lobby government and say, people like me that I've got multiple ideas what kinds of treatment that they need, but I need to do the research to see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to come back to that in a minute, where people can find and more information that you can provide on that. But back to the oxytocin quickly, like that after birth bubble is just incredible.
Exactly. It's nice, isn't it?
The oxytocin, from memory, from some of the research that I read on oxytocin when I was looking at it for other things, was that it's also used for binging disorders. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that, and in terms of the use, is it a nasal spray? Is it?
Yeah, so it's a nasal spray, and people do it once a day in the morning. It's like only kind of allergy kind of. So so it has had some use in other mental health disorders. Especially people that have problems with bonding. It has had, as you said, binge eating. So and one of the, so there are a couple of reasons. I could talk to you about the neurobiology at length for hours, but there's a couple of reasons why we think it works. So one, it is helping people with their kind of bonding with other people, and how the way they look at their faces and their expressions and so on and so forth, but also a lot to do with your self-compassion as well. So feeling a lot more contained and emotionally regulated in yourself. That's the other positive side effect.
Yeah, incredible. So now, Susan, as we wrap up, again, there's always 1,000 more questions that I want to ask, but we could be going on for hours. But mindful of time. Now, what What's your parting advice for those who believe they have a body dysmorphia or a body image issue? What should they do in terms of get help, or where to go to, and also where we can find your actual body image survey, so those that can be done and pushed across Australia.
Sure. So I encourage people to go and talk to their GP. I am really trying to train up GPs and make sure GPs understand how to talk to people about body image issues. I've written lots of documentation for GPs that I'm trying to roll out. So hopefully your GP will be able to talk to you about body image issues. But most psychologists understand body image issues. So if your GP is not feeling very comfortable, get to see your local psychologist. There's plenty of people around that can talk to you about in that space. The Butterfly Foundation has fantastic advice on body image and psychoeducation on their website. I was only speaking to them yesterday, and we're going to upgrade some of it. So there's going to be more and more advice in terms of body image issues on the Butterfly website. They're a really fabulous resource. Lifeline and people at Lifeline are very used to talking to people about all sorts of different mental health conditions. So that's another resource if you're really in crisis. And then my National Body Image Survey, really simple. You will find it on www.nationalbodyimagesurvey.com. And it is Australian. I was going to put the AU on the end, but .com was available, so I didn't.
There's always the ones available first.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's incredible. So we'll also put that obviously in all the show notes. And once again, Susan, this has just been incredible. Like, your knowledge is massive, obviously, and I would love to talk to you about so many different topics across this field, but maybe a time again in another 6 months.
Another 6 months, we could have another chat.
Another topic, or even an information session on how everything's been with the psilocybin and also your body image survey, because that would be
that would be great.
Yeah. So thank you again so much. It's been absolute pleasure to be here with you and asking you these questions, and I really appreciate your time.
No problem at all. Thanks very much and I hope your listeners enjoyed listening to me, and I really hope you fill my survey in, because we'd love to get to those 50,000, because the more we know about body image in Australia, the more at the end of the day I can lobby the government and help you.
Absolutely, totally agree. And I think this is a really good way of getting that out there as well, Susan. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Smarter Not Harder podcast. We are incredibly grateful to have Dr. Susan Rossell back on the show, and for sharing her expertise and passion for looking deeper into body image and her search to find the answers. If you found today's conversation valuable, we kindly ask for you to take a moment to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred listening platform. Your feedback and support mean the world to us, and it helps us reach more curious minds like yours. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay updated on our latest content. We hope that you get a new understanding of these issues from today's podcast, not only that deepens our awareness, but also empowers us to foster a more compassionate and informed society and treatment outcomes towards body image. As we wrap up today's episode, remember that knowledge is power. We are committed to bringing you 1 cent solutions to those $64,000 questions, and we appreciate your continued support and curiosity. Thank you for tuning in to the Smarter Not Harder podcast. See you again soon.